Let's completely shift our perspective on ancient Rome for this explainer. We usually picture this pristine, gleaming empire of white marble, right? But to really understand the people who actually live there, we've got to dig through its buried layers. We're going to look at Rome not just from the top down, but from the bottom up, literally wiping away the dirt and volcanic ash to uncover the incredibly diverse, messy lives of its everyday citizens.
So what actually happens when you dig beneath the most powerful empire in history? Well, to truly get this society, we have to look way past those grand historical narratives. We need to treat these archaeological sites almost like 2,000-year-old crime scenes. I mean, every brick, every scrap of metal, and every hidden room holds a vital clue to how these people lived, how they socialized, and crucially, how they controlled one another. And to find our very first major clue, we've got to go underground.
We're starting at the absolute peak of Roman extravagance with Emperor Nero's infamous golden house, the Domus Aurea. Believe it or not, surviving sections of this colossal, mind-boggling palace are deliberately buried 13 feet beneath the modern, bustling streets of Rome. Right now, archaeologists are working in this fragile, underground maze just to preserve its golden ceilings and precious frescoes from rotting away entirely. But it begs a massive question. Why on earth was it buried in the first place?
Well, think about the sheer audacity of Nero's real estate grab. Later emperors like Hadrian built sprawling luxury palaces too, sure, but they built them in places well outside the city limits. Nero, on the other hand, he shamelessly flaunted his unimaginable wealth by taking up 125 acres of prime real estate right in the beating heart of the capital. The guy even built an artificial, private lake for himself right in the middle of Rome. As you can probably guess, this brazen land grab triggered a massive political backlash. After a devastating fire in 64 AD, Nero essentially claimed the scorched earth for his own mega palace, which absolutely infuriated both the elite and the general public. By 68 AD, things boiled over. He was declared a public enemy and committed suicide. Shortly after, the new emperor Vespasian made a brilliant and highly calculated move. He literally drained Nero's private lake and just started burying the palace. Successive emperors kept at it, burying Nero's legacy to literally give the center of the city back to the people.
But why go through the monumental effort of burying the most extravagant palace in history just to build an arena? Well, consider what Vespasian built on top of that drained lake, the Colosseum. But here's the thing. This wasn't just some generous gift to the public for entertainment. Not at all. The Colosseum was a highly engineered architectural tool for social control. It was perfectly designed to replace the bitter resentment caused by Nero's selfish luxury with a unified, strictly regulated sense of what it meant to be Roman.
To put it in perspective, Vespasian's gigantic amphitheater seated a staggering 50,000 spectators. And these massive crowds were gathered to witness incredible and honestly brutally violent spectacles. We're talking wild animal hunts featuring exotic beasts dragged in from the far edges of the empire, gruesome public executions, and of course, those legendary gladiator battles. But the real spectacle wasn't actually down on the arena floor.
The absolutely crucial point here is that this 360-degree arena forced everyone to look at each other. It was constantly reinforcing your exact place in the strict Roman social ladder. You literally entered through a numbered gate that matched your ticket, and boom, you were put right in your place. The emperor and the elite senators, they had the absolute best views down at the bottom. But as you climbed the steep, dark corridors to the very top, you'd find the absolute worst seats, often just standing room, which were strictly reserved for the poorest citizens, enslaved people, and women. It was essentially a 50,000-person mirror reflecting the rigid Roman hierarchy.
And Rome brilliantly exported this exact model of social control. As the empire rapidly expanded, they built over 230 mini colosseums all over the known world, from Britain all the way to North Africa. Just recently, in a newly discovered buried amphitheater in Volterra, Italy, archaeologists unearthed a 1,500-year-old vase. It didn't have any official fancy stamp on it, but locked forever in that ancient mud was the actual thumbprint of the potter who made it. It's just such a sudden, deeply humanizing detail hidden amidst these towering monuments of state power.
Seeing a thumbprint like that really makes you wonder, what was daily life actually like for the everyday people, forced into those terrible seats at the very top of the amphitheater? To figure that out, we need to leave the grand emperors and elites behind, dig deep down to the bottom of the social ladder, and take a close look at the amazingly preserved everyday citizens of Pompeii.
So, long before the catastrophic eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD, places like the Stabian Baths in Pompeii were the absolute beating heart of social life for the middle and lower classes. Bathers would go there to exercise, scrape off sweat and oil with a curved metal tool called a strigil, and then move through a series of rooms set to varying temperatures. It was incredibly loud, humid, and bustling. In fact, archaeologists digging through the dirt of a service corridor there recently found a delicate bronze hairpin clearly dropped by a Roman bather over 2 millennia ago.
Now, to understand how these sprawling public baths actually functioned, specialist cavers had to squeeze beneath the floors of Pompeii right into the ancient hypocaust heating system. Down there in the pitch dark, they found an entirely intact testudo, which is this rare, tortoise-shaped bronze water tank. It was installed directly over a roaring furnace, allowing a continuous cycle of cold water to be heated and immediately returned to the immersion pools up above. It's absolutely brilliant engineering, designed for the sole purpose of keeping communal waters perfectly warm for socializing.
But the sheer scale and contrast of Roman society really hits you when you compare those public luxuries to what archaeologists just found outside Pompeii's city walls. By pouring plaster into cavities left behind in the volcanic ash, they revealed a cramped, completely dark room of the slaves. 3 people shared this tiny, suffocating space. It was packed tightly with simple wooden beds, basic storage jars, and the rope-lashed wooden parts of a chariot. It's literally the most complete example of an enslaved person's living quarters ever discovered in the entire empire.
Seeing those cramped beds inevitably leads us to a really dark question. Was enslavement a permanent sentence in the Roman Empire? Well, the Roman economy was unquestionably built on the backs of enslaved people who were treated as mere commodities. However, unlike a lot of later systems of slavery, skilled individuals in ancient Rome could occasionally earn tips or a small wage. And if they managed to save enough over time, they could actually purchase their own freedom and officially become citizens.
And we have some truly spectacular proof of this kind of social mobility. Archaeologists recently uncovered the tomb of a man named Marcus Venerius Secundio. His tomb inscription tells this unbelievable rags-to-riches story. He actually started his life as an enslaved custodian guarding the Temple of Venus, but he eventually purchased his freedom, rose all the way to the rank of an elite priest, and became so wealthy that he personally funded a lavish 4-day festival for Pompeii featuring both Latin and Greek performances. Talk about a complete turnaround.
But what makes Marcus's story even more mind-blowing is what archaeologists found inside his walled family tomb. Unlike almost all other prominent Romans of his time who were cremated, Marcus was uniquely buried. In fact, experts think he may have been intentionally embalmed. When they finally opened his burial chamber, they found a remarkable skeleton that still had patches of white hair and a partially mummified left ear. Because of this incredibly rare preservation, his remains are providing unprecedented forensic clues about the actual health and lifestyle of someone who climbed from the very bottom to the absolute top of Pompeian society.
And it wasn't just about grand temples and elite priests. Everyday Pompeians found their own deeply personal ways to interact with the divine. For instance, in a middle-class residential block, excavators found a private lead water pipe that was legally hooked up to the city's main aqueduct. But right next to it, buried carefully in the dirt, they uncovered the skull of a bull alongside some ceramic cups. This strongly suggests a private ritual sacrifice. It's a clear sign that these middle-class citizens were negotiating directly with their gods, likely asking for everyday blessings upon their newly installed freshwater supply.
Archaeologist Mario Grimaldi, who actually worked on unearthing that exact bull skull, said something that really resonates. He said, "The possibility to touch the real life 2,000 years ago. It's important for us to understand this society." And I think that quote just perfectly captures the emotional weight and the sheer thrill of this archaeological work. It's not just about finding gold coins or pristine marble statues. It's about wiping away the volcanic ash to reveal the messy, complex, and deeply human lives that built this empire.
So, every single time a trowel scrapes the earth in Italy, a new story emerges that totally shatters our preconceived notions. From Nero's selfish golden palace deliberately buried by his successors, to the calculated social engineering of the Colosseum, all the way to the cramped, dark quarters of the enslaved and their incredible paths to freedom, Rome was just vastly more dynamic than we ever realized. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this deep dive into the buried layers of Rome leaves you eager to discover even more about our ancient past. Because, from golden palaces to the cramped quarters of the enslaved, what forgotten stories do you think the next layer of dirt will reveal?